I'm guessing quite a few members, Mr. President. Want me to begin?
Roll call.
Senate roll call, day 6, February 19th, 2024. Anderson? Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Present. Whiteman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? Here. French? Here. Furphy? Here. Grew? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Kinski? Here. Kolb? Present. Landon? Here. Larson? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Anderson? Excuse. President Driscoll.
Here.
Mr. President, 30 aye, 1 excused.
Thank you. Prayer by retired Reverend Richard Gilbert, Methodist. We're bringing him out of retirement. I don't know why they put retirement there.
Thank you for preserving this time of prayer, and thank you for inviting me. And you know, I was just sitting over here and some kind soul brought me a glass of water. What a kind, thoughtful deed early in the morning, to be welcomed with a glass of water. Above us and beneath the grand glass platform are our four sisters. And I would like to use what those four sisters represent in our prayers this week. May our prayers always be endorsed with truth. So let us pray. Eternal God, we would know, we would speak, and we would live truth. Truth at times is so comprehensive and even seems conflictual, it appears elusive. We strive in our best ability to comprehend, speak, and practice truth. We listen attentively. We think critically, carefully, and with discernment, for we would know what is true so that we can respond responsibly. And so we prayerfully request your insight, your wisdom, and your presence within our lives, so we may be persons of truth. We pray to be persons of truth, so the words of our mouths and the works of our hands will be true through and through. Gracious God, grant that truth may illumine our way, so we may pave a way that is clear and meaningful for those who walk with us and those who will follow after us. We ask that you will be present with all who are presidents on this day, and they may always uphold the gift of truth. And so with the best that is all within us, we offer our prayer in the name of the one who said, I am truth. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance, Senator Ellis, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Senator Boner. maybe.
Good morning, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
You bet.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have a special guest sitting here behind us, visiting from Glen Rock, a gentleman named Casey Toner. If you just want to step forward here. He's been working 17 years for the state of Wyoming with the Oil and Gas Commission. Before that, he has served as an artillery unit in the Wyoming National Guard. Before that, he was infantry in the active duty Army. Maybe just as important as anything, he's the father of my intern here, Casey, and also father of Clara Toner. So it's always good to see folks from back home. We have a dedicated state employee here who does good work, making sure that our oil and gas fields remain in compliance with the rules that we make here. So let's go ahead and welcome him to the Senate.
Here, here, here. Senator Larson, you're going to be up twice because we're about to do journal too. Privilege of the floor. Granted.
Mr. President, thank you. A privilege of the floor? All righty, thank you. I have a very special guest. He was a representative down on the other end of the Capitol with me for quite a few years, and I would like you all to recognize Mr. Dr. Hallinan from the Gillette area. He has a ranch over by Devil's Tower, so I don't know which house he's claiming right now, but please give him a big welcome.
He does hail up my neck of the woods. We proudly claim he, as you guys know, he was on the other side for a number of years and proudly served us. He also will be the honorary doctor of the day. Means we don't have a doctor today. I'm going to make him the honorary doctor of the day. If he declines, we're down to Senator Baldwin and Senator Barlow for our health care. Oh, we do have one here now. Mine doesn't show. Here it comes. Now I have a real doctor of the day. Excuse me, Dr. Hallinan. Doctor of the day is Jason Bloomberg, MD, who's been serving the people of Wyoming for more than 20 years. Graduate of the University of Wyoming Family Medicine Residency of Cheyenne and serving our nation's veterans for more than a decade. Today is fourth day volunteering during the legislative session. I'm sorry I missed that. I didn't catch. I saw you back there at the deal. Thank you very much. And my bad. And Dr. Hallinan, no offense, you're still honorary doctor of the day. Senator Kinski.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
Granted.
I want to share with you a story about why Dr. Hallinan has always shared a very special place in our family's heart. He was the doctor when my wife was pregnant with our second child, and she went into labor, and he had this device that they screwed into the top of the baby's head, and it monitored the heart rate, blood pressure, and everything. And so there's Dr. Hallinan, and all you see is his eyes over the top of the mask. And he looks up at my wife and says, "This baby has that umbilical cord wrapped around her neck. I want it here in 3 pushes or I'm going in and getting her. Call the surgeon." And all of a sudden these nurses appear and there's scalpels and trays of gleaming instruments. And my wife, the bed rail shook as she pushed that child out until you could just see the top of her blue eyes. And then Dr. Hallinan reached in, grabbed that umbilical cord and cut it. And, but for that technology and but for having just a fantastic doctor who knows what may have happened. And so we've always been very grateful to him. Now, when my daughter was older and I told her that story, she said, "You let him screw something in the top of my head?" And I said, "It may have saved your life." Thank you, Dr. Hallinan, for all you've done.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I wanted to note to the body that this week is Wyoming School Board's Appreciation Week, and you may have seen some of them running out of the building. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the school board members who serve across our state. These locally elected representatives devote significant time and energy to Wyoming's public schools, ensuring every student benefits from a quality education. As locally elected officials, school board members provide important leadership for our educational system. Please join me in thanking all of the local school board members for their work, leadership, and service to Wyoming students. Thank you, school board members. Please rise.
Thank you. Senator Brennan,
May I have privilege of the floor?
granted.
I would like to introduce you guys. My daughter, Selah, is here today to watch what we do.
Now, I'll take a quick privilege, and we did the school boards all together, but I'm going to point one out that's near and dear to me, is we've got Best Town on Earth, Upton. We have Weston Seven's board and part of their staff here. I'm not going to name them all, but I'll tell you, these small districts in Wyoming, those of you that live in them, the dedication of the people that run those districts on pretty much shoestring is incredible. We talk about money and what we spend and how we do it. And I've watched Upton have their people do everything and give it all for the kids. And so please rise, guys, and get one more round because you deserve it. And my daughter taught there. That doesn't hurt at all. So, okay. Do we have a doctor's report from the field? Senator Barlow. Do we? Yeah, we can put the pictures up. So we're on our lambing, calving, whatever you call a yak deal report. He's going to get it. Reading and correction of the journal.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 16, 2024 has been read and recommends it to be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Any objections? Hearing none, report is approved. Today in Wyoming history. Oh, there we go. The report's here, folks. Look what we have here. That does not look like a bison to me. Senator Barlow, could you please explain?
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, so there should be a picture coming up that there are survivors on the ranch. This one did not survive. And I thought it would be fitting, as you may know, some of you, when I was in the House of Representatives, I was in the House of Representatives, we had a tradition, we brought skunks in during budget week. And when your bill died, you put it underneath the skunk. So this year, I think my tradition is when my amendments die, I'm going to put it on the end of this yak horn. And that'll keep me humble about where I've been. Anyway, this is a yak that I bought about 8 years ago. He lived to about 12 years old, and then I decided he would look better on somebody's wall. So that is one of the creatures that was part of our ranch. And then if Mike can bring up the picture, like I said, we do have survivors. It is lambing season on the Barlow Ranch. Obviously, my wife is doing the work. There you go. This morning, born yesterday while I was home. That is not a yak.
Pointed out to me he had quads earlier in the week, so which is pretty rare on sheep. So they didn't all survive, but he did have quads. So thank you for the report. Kind of brings us up. Today in history, kind of an interesting in my country. Final run of the Black Hills stage leaves Cheyenne. Quote for the day, in honor of President's Day, a quote from Abraham Lincoln: "We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses." Pretty good one. We're on the budget, second reading of the bill. I didn't bring you a Reagan quote. I'm kind of a Reagan guy. If you guys stop in my office, you can see part of his stuff in there because that's where it's at. But really is an honor for President's Day. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives. February 15, 2024, message number 100. Mr. President, House Bill 8, Commercial Driver's License Hazardous Materials Endorsement, passed the House, ayes 59, noes 2, excused 1. February 15, 2024, message number 101. Mr. President, House Bill 9, Fuel Tax Licensee Information Deadline, passed the House, ayes 61, excused 1. February 15, 2024, message number 102. Mr. President, House Bill 70, Local Government Distributions, passed the House, ayes 59, noes 2, excused 1. February 16, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill 10, Grace Period State Land Lease Renewals, passed the House, ayes 61, excused 1. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, House Bill number 11, State Land Lease Amendments, passed the House, ayes 61, excused 1. February 16, 2024, message number 105. Mr. President, House Bill 15, Health Insurance Reimbursement of Overpayments, passed the House, ayes 61, excused 1. February 16, 2024, message number 106. Mr. President, House Bill 16, Sutton State Archaeological Site Legal Description, passed the House, ayes 60, noes 1, excused 1. Message number 107, February 16, 2024. Mr. President, House Bill 26, Emergency Protective Services Effective Period, passed the House, ayes 44, noes 17, excused 1. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, message number 108, House Bill number 27, DFS and Law Enforcement Cross-Reporting, passed the House, ayes 44, noes 17, excused 1. February 16, 2024, message number 109, Mr. President, House Bill 32, Geologic Sequestration Unitization Amendments, passed the House, ayes 61, excused 1. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 34, Sex Offender Registration, Registerable Offenses, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Case, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. No, Senator Cooper. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 92, Registered Sex Offender Employment Restrictions, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Furphy, Landon, Schuler. No, Senator Case. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred Senate File 113, Light and High-Profile Vehicle Closures 2, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Brennan, Furphy, Kolb, and Pappas. Senator Boner, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 41, Banking Division, Classification, and Salary Exemptions, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, Committee Number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding that was just read in, has an appropriation, and pursuant to Senate rules, I ask it be re-referred to the Appropriations Committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Dockstead, are you ready on a re-referral?
No.
Okay, we'll take it up a little later, thank you. Bills on second reading. Second reading of Senate files. Senate File 5, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection.
Senate File 5 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 7, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign Vulnerable Adults.
Senate File 7 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 31, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration Promoting Obscenity.
Senate File 31 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 65, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 65, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments.
Senate File 65 have been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 81, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 81, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities Immunity.
Senate File 81 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 84, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 84, School Facilities Use Fees.
Senate File 84 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall it be heard a third time? Hearing no. Senator Brennan, thank you very much.
I would ask that this bill be laid back one day, please.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looks like we're just a little break here, and if I could, please, because we had so much going on in the beginning, I'd like to have privilege of the floor for just a moment.
Granted.
Thank you. Got a wonderful group that I'm going to introduce you to. Their first time ever to visit the legislature. And I got this wonderful gift baskets in the back, but they've already been snatched, some of them. So I encourage those young people to meet me down in the lobby afterwards. We'll get those gift baskets to you. But I would like the Senate to welcome Swift Creek High School from Lincoln County School District Number 2. Folks, would you wave your hands up there? Thank you. Would the Senate welcome them, please? Thank you, Mr. President.
Privilege of
Senator
the
Larson.
floor, please.
Granted.
Thank you. I know the school boards, many of them were introduced already, or they all stood up together, but I would like to have you welcome my school district from Powell. They drove a long ways. They all seven members made it. So would you please rise up there and we'll welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Bills on third reading, final passage. Majority Floor Leader Hicks, do we have a consent list?
Mr. President, we do have a consent list for third reading, which is Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Voluntary Fire and Voluntary EMS. Senate File 9, Parental Rights and Education 1. Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2. Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding.
Would anyone like any of these removed from the consent list? Hearing no objections, Chief Clerk will call the roll. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS. Senate File 9, Parental Rights and Education 1. Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2. Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Excused, Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Dockstetter. Ellis. French. Murphy. Guru. Hicks.
Aye.
Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinski. Cole. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 30 aye, 1 excused. Senate File 3, are there any changes? Case, aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. Closing vote. Ide. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 3, 28 aye, 2 no, 1 excused. Senate File 9, are there any changes? Rothfuss, aye to no. Guru, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 9, 28 aye, 2 no, 1 excused. Senate File 38, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 38, 30 aye, 1 excused. Senate File 60, are there any changes? Beitman, no. McEwen, no. Closing vote. Closing. Ellis, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 60, 26 aye, 4 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS, Senate File 9, Parental Rights and Education 1, Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2, Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding have passed the Senate. Third reading. Senate File 70, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 70, Investment Modernization State Non-Permanent Funds 2, sponsored by the Capital Finance Committee, an act relating to public funds.
Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. President, I just want to give a kind of a recap of what this bill does. And so, Mr. President, this is a culmination of 3 years of work of your Capital Finance Committee. You'll remember last year we came back trying to achieve a higher rate of return on those investments that we have in the state of Wyoming. Last year we established the reserve accounts for 4 of our permanent constitutional funds. The purpose is to get a higher rate of return on our investments. Keep in mind, folks, that 25 to 30% of all the money that comes into the state is from those investment earnings. This bill specifically deals with 2 of our statutory trusts. And again, the concept there was to try to get a higher rate of return for both the Cultural Resource Trust Fund and the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund. There's no money here involved. This is dealing with the money already invested in those 2 trust funds. And so what your Capital Finance Committee did is we tried to figure out a way that we could optimize and increase those returns in those funds. Currently, both of those funds are invested in Pool A, which is one of the lower returning pools, and the reason they do that is because they have a cash emphasis on their spending emphasis. So they got to keep it in short-term liquid assets. What we've structured here is to go in and redo the how that we would appropriate the money out of those accounts. So if we look at that and we look at the current investment strategy in Pool A, the 3-year average based on reports from the State Treasurer's Office is about 4.2%. So what we've done is we've got rid of the inviolate nature of these and moved these towards an endowment model. But accompanied with that endowment model, we established a spending policy. And so if you look at that, currently it's generating about 4.2% with the permanent nature of these funds, because they will be invested in a very similar nature that we do the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. It's anticipated over the next 3 years that'll generate 6.5%. So there's a differential of 2.3% increase in investment returns associated with just moving this. Now the spending policy is very important because historically what both of these trust funds have done, they've just had the interest that comes off of those, and that's what they spend. What the spending policy does is based on a 5-year average of those investment returns, and it provides that amount of money. So it provides that security and assurances that there's going to be money associated with this. Overall, Mr. President, what this effectively does is increase the rate of returns for those 2 trust funds and provide some assurances of the amount of money that's available to do grants through both the wildlife and the Cultural Resource Trust Funds.
You have 3 seconds left. Would you like to use them?
No.
Further comments? Senate File 70 have been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall Senate File 70 pass the Senate? Investment Modernization State Non-Permanent Funds 2. This requires a 2/3 vote to pass. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 70, third reading roll call. Anderson excused. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski?
Aye.
Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 70, 30 aye, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 70, Investment Modernization, State Non-Permanent Funds 2, has passed the Senate. Senate File 90, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 90, State-Managed Local Government Equity Investment Pool, sponsored by Senator Garou, an act relating to public funds.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, good morning. Good morning, members of the 67th. This is the third reading on Senate File 90. I want to first just let everybody know to thank you for all your help and support so far on this bill. I'd like to thank the good senator from Sheridan County for his amendment, as you remember after it came back from committee, to work on the ESG policy with regard to these investments. Remember, this allows our local, our cities, towns, and counties to be able to invest in the same total return pool that the good majority floor leader just laid out in the previous bill. Once again, helping cities, towns, and other entities be able to take advantage of our total return policy that your Capital Finance and Capital and Investment Committee has been working on. And so this too is going to take a 2/3 vote today. And so because of the nature of the investment and what we're asking you to do. So I appreciate your support and stand for any questions and hope you'll vote aye. Thank you.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall Senate File 90, State-Managed Local Government Equity Investment Pool, pass the Senate? Once again, just brought out by the good senator, this requires 2/3 to pass. Any further comments or debate? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 90, roll call. Anderson excused. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 90, 27 aye, 3 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elect to Senate, Senate File 90, State-Managed Local Government Equity Investment Pool, has passed the Senate. We're going to stand at ease to the sound of the gavel, probably 10 minutes or so. We've got some technical issues going on, so let's have fun, guys. Senate File 1, second reading of the bill.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations 2, an act relating to make appropriations for the fiscal biennium commencing July 1, 2024, and ending June 30, 2026.
Second reading amendment number 1, if everybody's ready. Randy, could you read the amendment in, please?
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 1, Section 1, Office of the Governor, page 5, line 3, after.
Thank you. Real quick, Senator Hicks, before you start, every single amendment is a roll call vote, so let's be pretty crisp on getting them through, and sponsors, please be ready. Senator Hicks, second reading amendment number 1 to the budget bill. Oh, they can be a voice vote, okay. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this would provide an appropriation of $2 million to the governor's office to provide direct and indirect financial aid to the state of Texas to ensure protection and securing our southern border. It provides a provision in there that has to have any contracts or agreements between the state of Wyoming and the governor's office be reviewed by the Attorney General of the state of Wyoming for conformance with federal and state law. Mr. President, I'm going to share with you an excerpt from another time in our history where we had an American crisis. In fact, it's titled American Crisis by a gentleman named Thomas Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot in this crisis will shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Mr. President, crisis is not my words. Those are the words of FBI Director Wray. On November 15, 2023, when he testified before the House Committee on Homeland Security, in that hearing, members received confirmation of the urgent national security threat posed by the nearly 1.8 million unknown gotaways and the rising numbers of individuals on the terrorist watch list apprehended crossing the southern border. Wray confirmed these facts in his testimony that the national security consequences of the crisis have turned every state into a border state. Director Wray even confirmed Joint Terrorist Task Force and all 56 agency field offices are occupied with threats coming across the border. Mr. President, on January 27, 2024, a coalition of 10 former FBI officials, including former FBI Assistant Director Kevin Brock, Chris Sweck, former Terrorist Screening Center Director Timothy Healy, and former Customs and Border Control Commissioner Mark Morgan, who was also a former FBI superintendent, testified that the issue at the southern border is an imminent danger for the United States, suggesting that the country has been invaded by military-age nationals. The letter warned the United States is facing a new imminent danger and highlights what officials say is a threat of an invasion at the southern border, where there were over 302 migrants encounters in December of 2023 alone, an all-time record, and 2.4 million migrants encountered for the year. This is the quote. In its modern history, the United States has never suffered an invasion of the homeland yet one is unfolding today. For these reasons, elements of this recent surge are likely no accident or coincidences. These men are potentially operators in what appears to be an accelerated and a strategic penetration of soft invasion designed to gain international access to a country that cannot be invaded militarily in order to inflict catastrophic damage if and when enemies deem it as necessary. Mr. President, today we've seen police officers beaten in subways by thugs of illegal alien gangs, people robbed, murdered, raped, and poisoned by fentanyl manufactured in China and shipped through our southern Mexican border. The cartels are killing thousands of young people in this country. The current estimate of cost to local, state, and federal governments now tops $90 billion to deal with this crisis, and yet our federal government does nothing. It's time to stand for this country and to stand with Texas. I would ask for your favorable vote.
Thank you, Senator Hicks.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and opposed second reading amendment number 1. Wholeheartedly agree with the author on virtually every single point. God bless Texas. We have great compunction and a great feeling for them, and they're absolutely right. Every county, every state is a border, part of the border now. Question is, do we send $2 million down there and willy-nilly spend it, or do we spend $2 million to reinforce our own problems? Folks, we had a shooting a couple blocks from the Capitol. We've got our own problems in the state of Wyoming, and I represent to you that the state of Wyoming money is much better spent on the state of Wyoming problems. I think we can send all kinds of support, just like we do a prayer, for what happens on the border, and Texas is going to do what Texas does. A couple $1 million is symbolic in all truth, but a couple $1 million is real money to our law enforcement in Wyoming, to our people that are on the front lines dealing with this. So for my end, I think it makes a great statement. But if we're going to be fiscally conservative in the state of Wyoming, let's put our dollars where they do the most work, inside our state, protecting our people and taking care of it, and not spend $2 million that really, in all truth, is not going to make a major effect. So on and opposed. Question called. Senator Hicks for a second time. Real quick, for all the debates, folks, 5 minutes, 2 times. So Senator Hicks, if there's anyone else to comment, I believe we have at least one. As the sponsor rises the second time, the debate will be stopped. So for any of you who want to talk, make sure you get up before the sponsor rises. General comment, Senator Hicks. If not, I'm going to recognize, we have several. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be quick. Article 4, Section 4 of our United States Constitution says that the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. We see this happening down in Texas, and I guarantee you it will come here. So I believe in helping Texas and also helping you, Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. So a historic, on and against the amendment, a historic $321.3 billion of a Texas state budget was just passed. Texas's annual, or their biennium budget that they passed was $321 billion. This amendment arbitrarily proposes $2 million. I happened to just receive a letter from a constituent today. Dear Senator Nethercott, I live in Senate District 4. I retired in 1994. At that time, retired teachers received a cost of living raise. That stopped in 2008. Then in 2012, the 100% plan was established. It has proved impossible to achieve. In the past 16 years, we have experienced many increases in cost of prescriptions, food, utilities, property taxes, communication costs, healthcare, and insurance. This month, my homeowner's policy increased from $1,990 to $2,866. And yesterday, my dental cost was $407. We need your help to return to the cost of living plan. Also, the decision to cut the summer lunch program for students shouldn't be allowed to happen. Those are Wyoming problems heard from Wyoming constituents. As I have said historically, and I stand here today, the situation at the border is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Congress's failure to act is further unacceptable. As we know, our governor used his hundreds of millions of dollars that he has in his budget that we appropriated to him to send Wyoming law enforcement to the border. He's also sent different types of resources to the border. We heard him state in his his support of the governor of Texas. What we did not hear him do in his $1 billion request to the Joint Appropriations Committee was ask for money to send to the state of Texas. Let's be sincere to our budget. Let's be sincere to our governor's complete support of the state of Texas. I know this legislature's complete support of ensuring our homeland is secure, that we all recognize the border is in crisis. But that $2 million to Texas's $312 billion budget is insignificant. But what it means to the retired teacher in my district who's trying to understand how she can pay for increase to her homeowner's insurance, that's where that $2 million needs to go, to the people of Wyoming who need our support and assistance now. And what it means to them is far more impactful than the $2 million it would mean to our friends to the south, on and against the amendment.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, if we're going to talk about how the costs went up and how people can't afford things, we should be talking about how much money we took from the federal government, because that's how that's all happened. When it comes to this, we've talked a lot about this. We've talked a lot about what's happening in the border. Bottom line is, talk's cheap and whiskey costs money. That's what we're saying here, is we're going to back up our talk. So on and for the amendment.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I'm just trying to get arms around what we've got in mind here and could use a little bit of help when the sponsor gets up for his second time. This appears to be a check that we would send to the state of Texas. I'm wondering why there is a need when the governor has lots of B11 authority, lots of ability to tap various funds. As was pointed out, we've already sent help down there. So either that, or is this particular amount of money, does that include helping the governor to send our National Guard? I'm trying to get a sense of whether this is over and above that kind of help the governor has already been sending, or if this is an amount that he would use to do that very thing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you very much. It seems to me the last time the Texans were here, they caused a little bit of trouble up in Johnson County. Maybe we could return the favor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate my colleagues' concerns, but to my colleague from Fremont County, we're not inviting them to come up here. We're just going to try to keep them down there on the border with some of this money. So to my colleague from Natrona County, it does exactly that. So this money is at the discretion of the governor. So if we incur expenses to provide state planes, National Guard, if our police want to go down there, would provide an opportunity. If any of the materials, personnel, or anything that the state wanted to send as a part of a state resource, would the governor would be able to pay for that out of this pot of money. Could write a check, that's undetermined at this point in time based on the needs. But Mr. Chairman, I want to talk about something from both of my colleagues from Laramie County. You know, in the last 3 years, we've accepted almost $2 billion of federal money in this state. Last year, we socked away somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.2 billion. The only way that was effectuated was because we were able to offset our general fund. And so for me, it seems like when we're talking about trying to help the people of the state of Wyoming, I say actions speak louder than words. And so why did we as a legislature elect to put all of that into savings if in fact we have all these dire emergencies? And the Appropriations Committee and this body and the body down the House says, no, we don't want to spend that money on, reduction of inflations and property taxes and all these other things that my colleague has illustrated. We just put it in savings. It wasn't our money. That was the future debt of every American in the United States of America. Almost $2 billion of federal debt was supplied to the state of Wyoming. Mr. President, it is symbolic. It's pretty important symbolism when you stand up for the country and stand up with those who are defending this country. That border is the border of the United States of America. We have an obligation as one of 50 states to help protect that border. On and for the amendment.
Voting on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1, the chief clerk will call the roll.
Roll call, second reading amendment number 1. Anderson excused. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 1, 20 aye, 10 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1 has passed the Senate. Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1. Reading clerk will read the amendment.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 2, Section 1, Office of the Governor, page 5, line 3, after.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 2, Senate File 1, and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Fellow senators, this is a budget amendment that is the result of some of the interim work the Transportation Committee did the past year. It's a two-pronged effort with a singular focus. That's getting as much funds on our highways as possible. There's two parts to that. I'll get to what the amendment does, but first a little bit of background. As I said, this was a partial result of our interim work. We were given the task by Management Council with a broad-based support from our leadership, recognizing the need to raise funds for our highways. There's several suggestions given, some of them being a toll roads increase in the fuel tax, things like that. The policy decision that we spent the most time on was this idea of raising the fuel tax but decreasing the registration fees. The idea being that we could do so in a way that would be net neutral to the average Wyomingite, recognizing that obviously our Wyoming residents are on the hook for our above average registration fees, whereas everybody that travels through the state is benefiting from a below average fuel tax. But even that, Mr. President, didn't have the necessary support to make it through a budget session. So when we're having that discussion about raising different types of revenue, this suggestion came to the forefront, the idea of, instead of stocking away hundreds of millions of dollars in savings, that we could take a portion of those savings and put it towards a basic function of government, which is our highway system. And so I think we recognize the need. We saw last winter just how tough a shape our roads are in. With a little bit of stress, we saw some significant damage to the interstate system in particular, not just throughout southern Wyoming, but up into the northern country as well. So I think we saw a little bit of anecdotal information for something that WYDOT's been telling us for years, which is that they are in preservation mode. They're struggling to keep our roads up to standards, and we should probably think about doing something to making sure we get as many funds to those roads as possible. And so what this amendment does, it's a two-pronged effort, as I said. The first one is basically a study that brings in an outside consultant and looks at the effectiveness and impact of WYDOT's procedures. Now, the last time we did this was a little over 10 years ago. I think you can make an argument that this is something that, as a matter of good practice, would be prudent every 10 years anyways. But there's also two new provisions that we've never really looked at as a part of the efficiency study. One is looking at a holistic view of not just the state-funded sources, but how that interacts with local funding. But we're also looking at and verifying the deficit that WYDOT says they have. And it varies from year to year, but it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, suffice to say. So we're not asking for the second part, which is diverting some savings to the highway fund. We're not asking for the 400 million. This is a 90 million taking from various pots, 30 million from the LISRA, 30 million from the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund Reserve account, and then we intercept 30 million that is, as it stands now, is supposed to go into the trust fund, or the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. So this attempt to get this problem, it's not going away anytime soon. We owe it to our constituents to make sure WYDOT continues to make the improvements that they've seen over the past year or so. This feasibility, or excuse me, this effectiveness, study of their effectiveness will help do that, but also recognizing that roads are a fundamental function of government, and we should consider diverting a portion of what we're considering saving here right now to the highway fund to help out with the problem, make sure it doesn't get worse. So like I said, in the context of this overall discussion where we focus a lot on raising fees, raising taxes, this is another solution. I hope you give it due consideration. I look forward to the discussion.
Further discussion. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I was wet behind the ears back in the 64th legislature down the hall, we had discussed moving the department that oversees the roads off the general fund to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a lot of money. We were promised back then that they would never come back and ask us for any more money again. Our roads would be great. They could actually put all this money to use and get to work on fixing our highways. I still drive the same stretch of I-25 every week. It's like a supercross course between Buffalo and Casper with all the whoop-de-doos in the road. And I haven't seen our roads get any better, but every year, every budget afterwards, they still come back and ask for more money. And here we are with another, it looks like a $90 million add-on to the budget. So I would just be curious to know where's the money going now if it's not going to fixing our roads? And what if we add another 90 million to it, where's it gonna go? It seems like it's going into a pretty big hole that we're just shoveling money into. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to rise and support the current chairman of transportation, having served as the past chairman of that committee. You know, I get it, and I share some of the frustrations just shared by my friend from Manchester. We've got a big problem out there, and it's just called infrastructure. And part of the reason that we don't fund the highways the way we probably should is that it's not very sexy. You know, you try to take that home to your Chamber of Commerce and say, well, we didn't do a lot of anything else, but we put a lot of money in the road fund. It's kind of hard to sell that back home, and I think from the heart, I think that's really part of the reason, Mr. President, that happens. I don't know what we're going to do, but I think this is one of the long-range public policy concerns that this body will have. If we don't do anything today, it's gonna be there tomorrow. But what we are putting aside for our highways right now is not enough. We've known it for a long time. And our highways are gradually sliding down the hill. We know that from the information that they provide to us out of the Department of Transportation. They monitor it. They can tell you exactly where the roads are at. And they're not where they were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. They're getting worse. So I commend my colleague for bringing this and for working on what are we going to do with this going forward, Mr. President. I don't know which way I'm going to go on this amendment, but it's going to be there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment. As your liaison to the Wyoming Transportation Commission, I do sit in their meetings monthly and see the dire need that our highways and bridges in this state, the ability for us to keep up has been eroded ever since I've actually been on the Transportation Committee. Every year we have a little less and less capability to keep up on our highways. And frankly, our highways are the lifeblood of our economy. I mean, our tourism, our ag communities, construction in this state, certainly our oil and gas folks. We all need to make sure that these roads stay in good shape. And it's not only the state. It's also our communities, our towns and counties. They're struggling with their infrastructure as well. So I think it's incumbent upon us to look at how we're taking care of those assets that we have. Remember that once one of these roads fails, it takes 8 times the amount of money to replace it than it does to continue to repair it. So I encourage you to be supportive of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I'd like to divide the amendment.
Proceed.
So Division 1 would be line 1 through line 29. Division 2 is line 30 to page 2 through line 17.
It is divisible. Senator Hicks, which division would you like to take up first?
Number 1, division number 1, which would be page 1, line 1 through line 29.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of order, then lines 18, 19, and 20 on the second page go with both amendments. Is that correct? Or both divisions?
That's the way I see it, yes, ma'am. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, on Division 1, my colleague did iterate that this had happened once about 10 years ago, and I remember that study that came out. And basically it identified millions, tens of millions of dollars where Whiteup probably could have done a better job in deploying those. That particular study looked at just their construction aspects. Well, my recollection of the results of that and the recommendations, and then Whiteup agreed with that about 6% of their entire construction budget was probably unnecessary and overspent and could have been done a better job. So 6% at that time was roughly about what the gas tax is. And so I do think it's appropriate that periodically that we get independent audits of these programs to find out when we're talking potential savings of tens of millions of dollars by auditing these programs, that's probably something that we should take a look at. So I would speak in favor of Division 1, Mr. President.
We are in Division 1. Any further? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm glad the division came about, and I'm glad we get to focus on this a little bit, because I do appreciate the good majority floor leader's comments about what we could learn from an audit, but I don't know that this is an audit of actually the books for that. This is talking about practices and procedures. So I would like maybe the good current chairman or past chairman of the Transportation Committee could stand up and maybe give at least this legislator and maybe the body some indication of what the concerns are within practices and procedures. We're talking about bidding procedures. I mean, what are we trying to get to with this, this particular division? Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the edification of the chamber, with the division came a fresh clock in terms of how many times you could speak. I think that's going to be relevant so that the chairman and prior chairman will have the opportunity to speak 2 times to each of the divisions. And then the final speaker still will be the movant of this, which is the good senator from Converse County.
Thank you. You're spot on, and absolutely, anytime we divide, it resets the clock for that division. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. So to be clear, this is, it'd be similar to what the last study was, and to give you some examples, hopefully that'll help out the body. For example, one of the changes that they made is they decided to go out and contract more engineers instead of having quite so many engineers on staff. It was quite a bit more efficient to do that work by contract. So, you know, things like that. It's basically an efficiency study. It's not an audit. I don't think we're going into, you know, follow the money, see where it goes, make sure that it's, you know, not being misspent somehow or abused. That's not what we're discussing here at all. It's just a general effectiveness study that, like I said, doesn't just look at whiteout, looks at the entire road system in the state, also verifies that deficit that we kept on hearing about and have heard about, I think, just about all of us. But it's important to remember that this highway fund has been, you know, it's been off the severance taxes for 20 plus years. While we did take it off the general fund, it's still off the general fund. I point out that, you know, we're not proposing any permanent changes in terms of funding. Maybe that's the second division. I'll withhold my comments there. But in terms of what the study is, that's what it does. It's going to be a efficiency study similar to what happened in 2013.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. On for Division 1. I think before I will support any more spending for WYDOT's budget, an increase, I think they desperately do need an efficiency study. The budget is so large that this I believe will yield potential savings and direction that will help us do what we all said we want to do, improve our highways. And I want to improve our highways also. But I will add, if somebody wants to see poor highways, go down south of here a little bit and drive on those roller coasters. So I do commend WYDOT for doing an excellent job for what they do have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? Sensing none. We are voting on Division 1 to Amendment number 2 to Senate File 1. This does involve money. It'll be a roll call vote. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 2, Division 1 roll call. Anderson, excuse. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? No. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Division 1, 22 aye, 8 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 1 of second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill, or Senate File 1 has passed the Senate. Senator Hicks, Division 2.
Yeah, Mr. President, I would rise in opposition that you would vote no on Division 2. It seems premature to me. If we're going to do a study, maybe we ought to look at that before we determine to just throw more money at a problem. So.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked if you voted aye for the first division, you vote yes for the second division. I can't emphasize enough that I think there's a growing consensus. We even heard from some of our senators who voiced skepticism as to whether we're going to spend more money on YDOT. We recognize that our roads are not in very good shape. It's been off of the severance taxes and FMRs for 20 years. Stateside funding has been flat since then. And what we've found in the Transportation Committee is that all the states around us, I mean all of them, not just some, all of them have about a 2-to-1 state to federal funding ratio. For us, it's the opposite. So we cannot continue to kick this can down the road. It's just making it worse. This is a problem that's not going away. It's absolutely vital that we take care of this basic piece of infrastructure that our economy depends on in order to function. And so I ask that you vote aye. You know, like I said, the point of the study is partially to verify how big the deficit is. But I didn't hear any disagreement here that there is in fact a deficit. This $90 million is a tiny portion. This is less than a quarter of what YDOT says that deficit is. So I ask that you vote yes on this second division. It's important to, it's an option, I would say, that is important to at least consider as a partial remedy. Because if not, we're going to be coming back, we're going to be coming back with other options. Management Council has made that clear. They've made it very clear. So I ask that you vote yes. This will help quite a bit. It'll help maintain basic infrastructure while not placing the burden on our taxpayers.
We're voting on second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1. False money, Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 2, Division 2 roll call. Anderson, excuse. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Division 2, second reading amendment number 2, 10 aye, 20 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 2 to amendment number 2 to Senate File 1 has failed the Senate. By your vote, second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 1 as amended has passed the Senate. Second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1. Reading clerk will read the amendment.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 3, Section 1, Office of the Governor, page 5, line 7, after.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment to Senate File 1, number 3. Fellow senators, this is a result of an initial ask in the governor's letter of $5 million to develop EMS regionalization. So we've reduced that ask by 90%, as that ask was deleted and removed. And I present this to you that we've had a task force working during this whole last year, during the interim, that has met, I can't count how many times, and developed a regionalization plan for EMS, or emergency medical services. That plan appears to be very effective, but it's going to take some motivation, it's going to take some time, and unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of money to get it going. There's an example of regionalization happening now in northern Wyoming, where 2 hospitals have gone together and are forming a district, or a regional district of EMS. As you've heard in the past from some of my colleagues, there's black holes in the state. We have black holes in some little communities. We're losing our EMS services. And probably the only way we're going to envelop those services and create safe, protected areas for our EMS services and for those people that travel through and live in those areas is through regionalization. I know the SLIB board heard recently that I listened in on an ambulance service in one of our districts that can't afford an ambulance. So not only do we have a shortage of EMTs, we have a shortage of equipment. And again, one of the ways to solve that is through this system. So we would take this $500,000, do a survey, and then appropriate to create EMS districts through a competitive application system. I'm not going to guarantee to you right now it's going to be 100% effective. I'll guarantee you it moves us a step closer to solving the problem. And if we don't solve the problem, we truly are at crisis stage. Every week, every month, we're losing EMTs, we're losing EMS services. And it affects every single person in here that drives through those areas. When you drive to and from your homes, unless you live in Laramie County, you're driving through these areas every day. And I suggest to you that it's time we do something about it, and I would ask for your favorable vote on this. Thank you.
Discussion. Senator Hicks.
Just a couple questions when it talks about competitive applications. Has there been some conceptual rollout of how that would be done? In other words, are we going to continue to support those, or how are we going to go out and get these other ones up and created is one thing. And then just with the task force, has there been any discussion about how do you create a sustainable form of local revenues to support these districts? And so if we could just get a little discussion on that, it would help me a long ways, Mr. President.
Further questions or discussion? Further? Senator Kinski, thank you.
Thank you. On and against, Mr. President. I agree with the sentiment of the bringer. It's just that we ran this play. We tried to use ARPA money to create regional ambulance demonstration projects. We had $10 million appropriated. And the one up my neck of the woods was already well underway before any state initiative came. The problem is getting all these local governments to come together and agree on the funding source. There was years ago when we were in the Jonas Center, we passed a special tax for emergency services. And I'm not sure that the particular area that wanted that even has implemented it to this day. There's solutions available. I just don't know if yet another contract to analyze is going to do us any good. I think at the local level, they got to decide they want to do this, and they got to find a way. This is a bottom-up, not a top-down solution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm kind of confused. I think I've heard testimony that the biggest problem we're having is finding people, finding the staff, and paying for it. And I think this amendment sets up buildings and districts where we're not going to have any ambulances or any people. And we'll go study it some more, but until we can support it and the communities can support it, I'm on and against it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion or questions? Further discussion or questions? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I see your concerns, those who are not with this. I've had an opportunity, serving on this committee, to see that we've got a gap, we've got a situation that's not being fixed, whether it's buildings, people, whatever it may be. I think at some point, we've got to get this sorted out. I wish it would be a bottom-up. I wish they would take and handle it. Northern part of our county did. They took care of it, and they set up emergency services up and down the whole valley. Now we've got a gap down on the southern end. We've got some gaps all the way across the state. And somewhere we've got to get it organized, because we're sending people back and forth across the state without any assistance or help. I made a late night drive all the way across the state one night, the middle of the state, and had a little encounter, bovine encounter out there. And generally, I don't get a 911 response where I was. That night I did. I was really surprised. And I thought, and they said, well, it'll be a while. It's going to be a while before we get any help out. Now, we were all basically okay, sort of. Some total vehicles and some problems out there, but there's a big gap out there. And we have to have some help sorting it out. And I know we're all afraid, how dare we spend some money on something like this? But I can tell you, folks, there are places across the state that don't have coverage. And at some point, they've got to have a little top-down help to get it sorted out. Because otherwise, we'll just leave them. Somebody will call 911 if they get a call through, and they'll say, sorry. It'll be a little while before we can get some help out to you on for the amendment.
Further discussion. Senator Baldwin for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good discussion, and I appreciate the questions, both the support and the opposition. To answer one of the questions, what this is designed to do is to create not necessarily a study, but a survey with 250,000 of these dollars. And we've talked about a lot of things, about a way to keep this sustainable in the future. Some of those have met with opposition, some have met with success, but we've not come up with a silver bullet. One of those is making EMS, one of the required services like law enforcement, like fire, and that's not met with success for obvious reasons, because the municipalities and the counties they don't have the budget. If we make this a required service, how are they going to pay for it? And nobody has that answer. So that's something and that's part of what the survey would try to find out, is how are we going to do this? To the other question, talking about brick and mortar and creating buildings while we're short on people, that's one of the things that this actually solves. And I would use the example of the good senators that have the district that's already working and nearly formed. They've incorporated a number of these very small areas that are very short on EMTs that are going to be assisted by these larger hospital districts, these larger hospital areas that have the EMTs, that have the ambulances, that have the services, and have a better start on the means to cover up some of those black holes, if you will. Some of those areas in our state are more easily covered than others. I know one of the counties in the north, further to the west, is going to be a difficult ask. And I know the district that talked about, or the area that talked about the Senate districts or the EMS districts previously when we ran the bill, they also are going to struggle with this. But it's something that I believe needs to be worked on. I think there's answers, and I think the northern counties are doing a good job now, and they've got a good idea, and I think it's workable in other areas. There's maps drawn as what districts might work, and I think it's something that we need to move forward, and I would ask for your support. And if we don't get the support today, I would ask for your support on the task force. Help us find a way. We did a statewide survey this year of all the EMS districts, and we got lots of answers, but nothing that's a silver bullet. So I ask for your support here.
Thank you. We're voting on second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1. It involves money. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call, second reading amendment number 3. Anderson, excuse. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Garoop? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 3. 12 aye, 18 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1 has passed the Senate. Second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1 has failed. Excuse me, I'll read it again. By your vote, second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1 has failed the Senate. Second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1. Meeting clerk will read the amendment.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 4, Section 1, Office of the Governor, page 5, line 7, after.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1 and ask for your favorable consideration. So members, we've had a theme in our first 3 amendments. The first one was protecting the homeland. The second was I'm trying to understand and clarify the basic functions of government. And the third one was regionalization, how we try to deliver services to our citizens. So ladies and gentlemen, with this amendment, and you have a handout on your desk, it was handed out this morning, it has a map, a colorful map, and then just some basic information about the current program. This is a program that was put in 2004 by the Wyoming legislature. It was a regionalization program to deal with the aftermath, or to prepare the state for the aftermath that we saw of 9/11. The tragedies, the lessons that were learned there across this country, we made adjustments in how we did things. Well, in Wyoming, because of our long distances and small populations in many places, regionalization seemed to be the way to approach this in our communities. So what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is teams across the state, 8 regions with teams who are trained to take care of us in the events of hazardous materials or weapons of mass destruction. Those teams are housed within fire departments and our law enforcement. And you can read through the different places. We have bomb squads, we have detection dogs, we have hazardous materials handling teams in fire departments. All of these entities are set up. And ladies and gentlemen, probably there's 3 things that I think are important to understand about where we are today. 1, we are completely dependent on the federal government for funding this system. You'll recall in the explanation of the budget, we had one of our good members get up and talk about funding $20,000 just so a particular group that oversees these teams and oversees these services could meet in person. We don't even have our CERT, or our State Emergency Response Council, meeting in person because we're relying on federal funds. So there was an ask to put $20,000 toward that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this ask, and it's a big ask, I understand that. This ask is to give the trained professionals we have out on the field in our communities the tools they need to actually do the work that they've been tasked with. And why don't they have the tools that they need? Because the federal dollars can continue to diminish, and they have sideboards in those dollars. Meaning you can't use it for this, you can't use it for this, and that varies by year. So what are we talking about? In the last year, there were 54 incidents in the state of Wyoming where a regional team was called out. Now, I'm not going to go through each year successive to that, but half of the, if you're looking at your map, half of the incidences, activations, if you will, that came out of this past year, those 54, were in Region 2 and Region 3. So the heart of our state, and then part of that I-80 corridor. Now, there were others, there were some in every region, and I can get into specifics if there's questions, but there were true activations. Now, that only tells part of the story, because not every, and this is something you learn when you talk to your folks on the ground in your community, is not everything gets reported to the state, meaning our folks are using these materials in support of just their daily work. the things they're doing, because what do they need to do with these materials? And they need to enhance their training. They need to use these things to do it. So what we're doing with this amendment, Mr. President, is we're asking for $3 million to support the law enforcement side of this, and $8 million to support the hazardous materials side of this. And hazardous materials, we talked about securing the border on the south end of on the southern part of this country. This is within our own communities. This is taking care of things that may occur in our own communities, and maybe they're nefarious in nature, ladies and gentlemen, but we have manufacturing, we have chemical plants, we have accidental things that happen too. And these folks are there to respond to those. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will ask you for your favorable consideration on this amendment. This is taking Wyoming resources to support Wyoming-trained professionals to protect our communities, and I'd ask for your support, and I would be glad to stand for questions. Mr. Chairman, I will say there is a division, Mr. President, there is a division, there's two pots of money, because we didn't want one to be cannibalizing the other's money. So we want our law enforcement side to have a pot of money to replace their robots, if they're outdated, their bomb suits, which go out of date every 5 years, et cetera. And we have big gaps, and different regions have different gaps. I'll just speak a little bit to Region 1. Region 1 is maybe more fortunate. It's based out of Campbell County, in both sides. And Campbell County.
Time. Pretty close. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Aye.
Okay. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable members, I'm a member of the State Emergency Response Commission, and I know the work that they do. I'm in support of this amendment. This is truly, in many ways, a national security issue. These hazardous materials, these potential weapons of mass destruction that could potentially affect the state of Wyoming is completely dependent on federal money. These are folks that do incredible jobs for public safety. I know that for some of you fiscal hawks that this is a number that you're grappling with, but this is public safety. And I will tell you, I personally believe that we may be facing at some point in the near future another 9/11. We are completely dependent on federal money. This makes us independent from the federal government with regard to what is needed for the public safety benefit of our citizens in Wyoming with regard to hazardous materials and weapons of mass destruction. I ask that you take a look at this. Take a look at this. This is about the safety of the state, and it deals specifically, again, I truly believe this is a state security issue with regard to what potentially we could be facing in the months and years ahead against the best interests of not only the country but our state. Thank you.
Mr. President, I would like to divide this amendment. So Division 1 will be line 5 through 14. Division 2 is line 15 through 24. And Mr. President, lines 1 through 4 go with both divisions.
Thank you. Division is in order. Senator Hicks on Division 1.
On Division 1, Mr. President, I think this is a concept that needs explored. I think we should do this, but at this point in time, what I think we ought to do is probably send this to an interim topic. I agree it's very important that we need to figure out how to do this within the state of Wyoming. I'm just reluctant to just throw out a number out there, not knowing all the particulars and the expenditures and the interplay between federal and state monies and how we leverage one or the other, and then how we provide all this assistance, and whether this is even an adequate amount of assistance for those local hazmat teams. So, Mr. President, I'm going to speak against this. While I agree with the concept, I think we just we'll be back here in 12 months. We can answer a whole bunch of these questions. I'd just like to see this be a whole topic for discussion of one of our committees to come up with a better solution to this issue and know what the actual costs are.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Before I go, Senator Landon, so folks, when I raise my hand, Means you have 30 seconds left to talk, because I hate to interrupt somebody. I just want to give you a cue without breaking your speech. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. And the previous speaker touched on a little bit of where I wanted to go real quickly. We haven't really done that. We jumped right in today. There's a tradition here and kind of a mantra that has been emphasized for as long as I've been in the Senate, and that is to support our Appropriations Committee. In fact, over the last 5 or 6 years, it became like the 11th commandment to support your Appropriations Committee. My curiosity on this one is, was there any testimony in front of our Appropriations Committee? And if so, what was it? And it goes to what the previous speaker just touched on, which is, is this enough? Is this what was asked for, but our Appropriations Committee did not provide it? I can't argue with the need whatsoever, but I'm just curious what our Appropriations Committee saw and did on this topic. And for this and the rest of the day, I'd like to try to support our Appropriations Committee. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start off by saying now for the rest of the story. I have firsthand information from our bomb tech in Sweetwater that they're having issues with the cooperation between the fire department and their division of emergency response. So there is a problem there. I think that this goes a long way, so on and for this division. This goes a long way to talk about what the real problem is, which I think we have to get down to the bottom of. Maybe it's not enough money, maybe it is enough money, but there's an issue. There's an issue that we're not cooperating between agencies, and I think we have to figure out how to do a better job there. So I'm on and for this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I do appreciate the conversation, and I hope the Appropriations Committee, a member of that, will stand up and speak to this. There was not a request from the executive branch that I understand for this. The requests that I received as a member, just like many of you do in your communities, came from my local folks, the folks that are responsible for this in my own community, both the fire side and the law enforcement side, which I'm pleased to have our chief and assistant chief fire department here watching this debate so they can understand, I said this is going to be a lift. This is going to be a lift. So where the numbers are derived from, there's 8 regional teams, and what they're dealing with is aged basic platforms. The trucks they have are 20 years old. They don't fit the equipment that they now are using to do some of these services. They're and aged, well, maintenance goes up. All those things go up. Dealing with a limited resource pool, those federal dollars, recall, $4 million of federal dollars are now annually trying to support all these needs, and those federal dollars have limitations how they can be used. So when we're talking about, so I think this is a realistic number within within our 8 regional teams that would direct $1 million per team, per region, to upgrade their equipment. And I'm talking about the basic platform. It may be just a truck. Now, as I mentioned, I got cut off in my 5 minutes because I spoke too long earlier. In my particular region, the county that I've come from, they actually went out and bought a new truck. But you know what they believe? They believe there should be a second truck, and they would try to send some of this funding to another community up the road where the appropriations chairman is from, because they have another issue over there. They have mountain passes, and they have in-access times when I-90 is closed on that one particular hill, which can happen quite often. So they are willing to respond to Sheridan, but if they had their own assets in Sheridan, all the better. They could respond to those things. And they have coal mines close by, et cetera. So I think that our teams, to getting to the working together, absolutely. That's why this is divided into 2 pots. So we can protect the interests of both pots. On the SO side, it's about, the SO story out of my community is, we have a robot. It's a really good robot. We just got our last update, and the company says we will no longer be supporting this machine. That might be 100,000, it might be 200,000, depending on what level. But these are the numbers that my folks, in collaboration with the RERTs all over the state, came together with. Now, folks, quite honestly, they'd take some more money. We all know that. We understand that. And they'd use it wisely, I'm confident. But this is the basic that would cover what they need, get them on par, and then they can continue to use the federal funds for training and for those other things that are also important that they're doing, that need to be done as well, supporting the people. So give them the tools to do the job that they're trained to do. This is the way. The last time the state of Wyoming invested in this program was 2007. I'll say it again. The last dollars that were spent by the state of Wyoming, is my best understanding, were in 2007. Surely we can scrape up this particular division, $8 million to support that service. I would ask for your favorable consideration on this division. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the comments of my friend from the center of the state about what did the Appropriations Committee hear. We heard none of this from the governor's office. We heard from Homeland Security. We didn't hear any request for funding here. And folks, we do have a process for budgeting. It involves these things where they're great ideas. It's a good idea, $11 million though, that has not been vetted through any of the processes. I agree with my colleague from Bags. Let's look at this on the interim. Folks, I have 3 police departments, 2 sheriff's offices, 2 county emergency managements. I haven't heard that there's a need. I have not heard that there's a need. I can tell you from my experience as mayor, there was lots of federal funding, continues to be lots of federal funding. The federal government is equally as scarred by 911 as was the rest of the country, and the Homeland Security money flows. Now, what I found when I was mayor is the problem wasn't lack of money, it was agency cooperation, it's everybody getting together to agree on what equipment is truly needed, it's people wanting way too many things that even an infinite amount of money could not have satisfied. They've got to sit down and prioritize, figure these things out. And so that's what I had asked locally. There was never a lack of resource once you got a clear picture of what everybody being forced to come together to communicate and agree really was needed. So I would just reluctantly against, but in my experience, there's just not been a lack of funding. There's been a lack of cooperation, a lack of communication, a lack of prioritization amongst the agencies. And, you know, there's local resources available as well. So if there's an issue there, let's take a look at it on the interim and let's go through the regular budget process so that we can vet this out. As my colleague from BAG says, we'll be right down here in 10 months, which is really kind of sad to think about. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Getting past that 10-month plan out there. So I stand up from a firefighter repetitively, time and time again, but I'm just not hearing the need for that. And I'm looking at the regional map, just not hearing the need for this kind of money this fast. I would probably lean into that interim look and say, how can we better set up the communications between 8 different regions and get this resolved? But on the fly like this and part of the budget, I'll probably be a no.
Amendment number 4, Senate File 1. Thank you. We're voting on second reading amendment, division number 1 on second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Division 1, second reading amendment number 4, Baldwin? Aye. Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll. Aye. Closing vote. Pappas. No to aye. Closing. Vote closed. Division 1, second reading amendment number 4, 11 aye, 19 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, Division 1 of second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1 has failed the Senate. We're on Division 2. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I would speak in favor of Division 2 on second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File. I think we've had a pretty good discussion earlier this morning, but folks, there's a real and clear and present danger out there associated with, we have foreign ownership of land here right next to our military bases. We know we've had incursions of thousands of military-age men coming into this country. It is a clear and present danger, and I think this is probably something that requires immediate attention. So on and for Division 1.
Further discussion? Oh, Senator Hicks, you spoke on Division 1 again. Division 2, can you make yourself clear, please?
So of Division 2.
Any further discussion? Question, Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was trying to get heard for the last discussion, but I gave up. But there's a question.
I'm sorry. Anytime you do that, please raise up and start shouting.
No worries.
I'm not immune to it.
I was just trying to move things along, but I did have some questions that didn't get asked or answered, and on both divisions and this whole concept. Can't this money be V11'd around if it is a clear and present danger? And why didn't the governor's office ask for this money? Why didn't the appropriations committee put this in the standard budget? Why is it coming in as a second reading amendment if it's so important? I haven't heard the answers, and for that reason, I'll be a no. Thank you.
My apologies, Senator Biden. Like I said, please beat me up. Further discussion. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I can't speak to what the executive branch did or didn't do or heard or didn't hear. That the governor, the chief executive outlines his expectations for each of his agencies. This happens to be within his own agency, if you will, the Office of the Governor. So how that happens or what happens there, I did not confer with those directions. I have conferred with the agency that's responsible for these activities, as we have a member who is also a part of that group, and they indicate there is certainly a need. Now, why doesn't it rise to the level of a budget request from the executive branch? Like I said, I'm not going to speculate on that. That's not my role. But it is my role, and it is my role to respond to my community when they say we have a challenge, there is an issue. Now, I understand there's maybe some hesitance about the $8 million, and that's a longer-term discussion, and I hope it is taken up in the interim by that very committee that should be, or that would be responsible for funding this. The shorter one, I mean, this smaller amount of $3 million, and nothing is small in a budget, but as far as insignificant, the $3 million, these are things that go out of date in 3 to 5 years. These are things that there is a continuous turnover. Training is annual, et cetera. So I think they're both important. If folks, including I think the good majority floor leader, for thinking this is clear and present danger, I think they both actually fit together. The first one is gone. The second one remains. I'd ask for your support on the second one. But I can't speak to the motivations or limitations at the executive branch. But that's our job. We're the appropriators. We can have this discussion right here, carry on that. Should maybe have we contacted and had a much more robust discussion months ago? Maybe so. We're just trying to understand what the need was and have those communications. And here we are today. I'd ask for your favorable consideration of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fascinating discussion. I appreciate it. I heard some reference to clear and present danger. Apparently that's the case with weapons of mass destruction, but not for hazardous materials. I'm just wondering what the justification is for that. pass hazardous materials all the time. You know, we deal with it in industrial areas that drive our economy in places like the Powder River Basin. Also have a little bit of experience with weapons of mass destruction. Those are a little bit harder to come by, as it turns out. So just wondering a little bit more discussion, you know, why we worry about WMDs but not hazardous materials.
Thank you, Senator Bonner. Senator Scott?
Mr. President, the question was raised about .0B11s. Mr. President, and I'm going to be speculating here a little bit, but the B11 was created as a device where we could accept federal funds when they were offered and we weren't in session to appropriate them. And that's, I think to this day, they're primarily used, not entirely, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, but primarily used when you have that circumstance and the federal government has offered something. And I would expect that if you see no B11s, there was no offer from the feds, that we weren't otherwise accommodating. And so that's why, Mr. President, you wouldn't see any here.
Senator Kinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my colleague from Bags, about the clear and present danger, this was not asked for by the governor's office nor Homeland Security, and I can tell you that in the Appropriations Committee, we received briefings both publicly and in executive session, and they're on top of it. They're on top of all the different threats that have been discussed. And were this needed, it would have been asked for in appropriations. I would urge a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I think what's going on in our southern borders is why I feel compelled to go ahead and add some support to this. I also have some family members that are in the military. In fact, they're in the intelligence division, a couple of them, and I just think there's some pretty serious things going on. And where we have I-80, a major thoroughfare going through our state, I think this is one of those areas where we may need to be a little bit more proactive instead of waiting around. And you know, who knows if it's something that might happen, you know, in our tenure. But I think there's things that are going on, and I think we should support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, I think my colleague from Campbell County has a good heart in this. I think that I'm reluctant to support it because I've seen money thrown at that agency that wasn't used properly. And that goes back historically when Wyoming took record amount of money and Congress had to come back and change all the rules because we were taking more money than larger populations. And then in the years to follow, there was reports from the Inspector General, I believe it was, but we had misappropriated that money. We took money for certain things and we didn't use it for that purpose. And those things aren't shocking, it happens. But more personally, I knew a guy that was a bomb squad tech in our state government. And this was just so the record's clear, it was under the previous governor, it was not under the current governor. But a new director came in, and you know, there's always a rivalry between the firemen and the police, but you got, so you had a police officer who was a bomb tech, and he was pushed out. We literally took that equipment and almost mothballed it down here in Cheyenne. He was based in Casper, and it really was a bad thing for the state. I mean, we had a guy that we put a lot of money in, trained him, and he was a good guy. He was really good police officer. He had good service record, and when we made him a bomb tech, he was a really good guy. Even the highway patrol people that I had talked to had talked very, very good about him. I don't know whether throwing money at an agency helps these kind of problems. And that's where I'm having a problem. I mean, we talk about hazardous waste and hazardous materials. I have a hazardous license. If I'm driving through an area and I have a problem, let's say I got to park the truck because there's a problem, I have to bring it to a safe haven. You can talk to 10 people in the government and try to find out where a safe haven is, and I guarantee you there's 10 people who might not know where that is. We have other problems that we could fix without spending a lot of money. And I think that's what we need to focus on. How do we take an agency like that, streamline it, and start focusing on what it's supposed to do instead of just throwing more money at it? So on and against. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Blame it on my lack of reading things in a timely manner, but I go through this amendment and I find out it's about weapons of mass destruction, and I'm a bit baffled because actually my son worked in Conoco and in the bomb division particularly, and they send out people. They've got jets on standby, they've got quick response teams. This is an extremely well-trained group of people when it comes to anything to do at this level of an issue. I don't know how we're going to do that. I mean, I don't think it's a wrong thing for us to have a person locally that can do this, but I think it's certainly, I don't know how you can physically make all that happen. These people are highly trained. You know, this isn't some normal clearance for defusing a nuclear weapon. Only the highest people have that authority. And I don't know how we're going to affect this. So I don't really know what this $3 million is really going to do at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say this. You know, no branch of the government is omniscient as to what will happen in the future. Some of us happen to believe that we could be facing some very difficult times. All you have to do is look at the international situation and the ripple effect that that could have in the United States. The people of Wyoming are going to be asking the day after we have some major catastrophe dealing possibly with weapons of mass destruction, why didn't you do something about it? This is the opportunity. I would simply, I don't think anyone would question my fiscal conservatism and in my voting record, but this is not the place to save money. And anyone who has served in uniform knows that what I'm talking about could very well happen. As a matter of fact, it already has happened to this country before. I happen to believe that we should not be solely reliant on the federal government to protect the people of Wyoming alone. It is the responsibility of this body, the legislative branch, to provide those critical materials needed for those extraordinary people that the previous speaker just talked about, to give them the equipment to protect us in that event. And again, I know I'm a broken record. I happen to believe that day is coming. And that is why I'm supporting this. And I ask that you think long and hard about this. Thank you.
We're voting on division number 2, to second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson, excuse. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Division 2, second reading amendment number 4, 14 aye, 16 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, second reading amendment, Division 2. By your vote, Division 2 of second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1 has failed the Senate. Second reading amendment number 4 to Senate File 1 has failed the Senate. Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move the Senate beg leave to sit and rise again.
Wrong motion, excuse me.
Mr. President, I move that we go eat lunch. Stand recessed until 2 p.m.
Are there any announcements? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minerals Committee number 9, Minerals Business and Economic Development. Your Minerals Committee number 9 will meet on the noon recess, and I'm asking you let the Minerals Committee move to the front of the line for lunch, because they need to eat and walk at the same time to hear in Room 4, Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments, Senate File 64, Mineral Royalties, Proportional Severance Tax Refunds. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your Corporations Committee will meet tomorrow with 3 separate meetings, but there's going to be a run-on of the same meeting. We're going to start at 7 a.m., and then we will continue 15 minutes upon the noon recess, and then 15 minutes upon adjournment for the day tomorrow, February 20th. We'll meet in our usual room, room W110. We will take up all the bills that have been given to the committee, and we're going to do them in numerical order. Those bills include Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resources Plans. That's a continuation. Senate File 25, Reclamation and Decommissioning Costs. Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies. Senate File 27, Special Districts Bond Elections Exception. Senate File 29, Major Political Parties, State Central Party Voting Members. Senate File 79, I think that might be an error, Mr. Chairman. It's supposed to be the utility donations. Senate File 29 doesn't exist. I apologize for that. So that is an error. Senate File 72, utility donations. Senate File 74, special districts reversal of dissolution for non-compliance. Senate File 79, malt beverage franchise agreements. Senate File 89, veterans ad valorem exemption amount. Senate File 97, prohibition on distribution of unsolicited ballot forms. Senate File 100, prompt payment of insurance claims. Senate File 102, foreign property ownership, critical infrastructure. Senate File 114, contractor licenses, reciprocal recognition requirements. Senate File 120, driver's license, unauthorized alien restrictions. After we finish all that, Mr. Chairman, we're going to talk about interim topics for a couple hours, and I'll buy them a cocktail.
You mind me sending you a few more bills? Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, is your first notice for meeting Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. Again, 7:30 a.m. Wednesday morning to hear 2 bills in room 6 and online. The bills are Senate File 98, Statute of Limitations, Medical Procedures on Minors. Senate File 99, Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. And if I might jump in with great respect and ask for a re-referral, I would appreciate that opportunity. Would you consider please re-referring Senate File 68?
Can't do a re-referral while we're doing this.
Pardon me?
Well, we're going to have to be back in after lunch for re-referrals.
Okay, thank you. I'll get on to the announcement then. Judiciary Committee 1 will meet tomorrow at a special time. So note this committee, Tuesday at noon recess. In W4 downstairs, we'll take up Senate File 63, Property Tax Exemption, Residential Structures 2. Senate File 126, Property Tax Exemption Inflation Cap 2, and Senate File 119, Property Tax Exemption Specified Real Property, Senate File 121, Property Tax Homeowners Exemption, and we will continue those upon adjournment tomorrow evening if necessary, Mr. President. And there may be some alterations in that list. We're trying to get bills where they need to go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Lyon. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources will meet tomorrow morning, Tuesday, February 20th, 8 o'clock a.m., and room W2 and online, to consider the following bills: Senate File 125, Parimutuel Wagering Activities Amendments, Senate File 111, Mule and Whitetail Deer Separate Hunting Seasons, and Senate File 118, Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Relocation Federal Action.
Thank you, Senator Schuler. You put my bills together. I appreciate that. Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, formerly known as Revenue, will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, February 20th, upon noon recess. Take up the following 3 bills: Senate File 85, repeal of sales tax on electricity; Senate File 94, an act regarding compelled speech in state employees; Senate File 130, the Equality State, Not Equity State Act. And committee members, please note, we have reserved the same committee room, W6, upon adjournment to take up any bills that may be referred to our committee to take the load off. Thank you very much.
Well done, Senator Biden. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, will meet at, let's say, 12:45 in room W2 and online to look at Senate File 77, Homeland Defense, Infrastructure Reporting and Investigating, Senate Joint Resolution 2, Foreign Adversaries, Prohibited Property Ownership, and Senate File 102, Foreign Property Ownership, Critical Infrastructure.
Thank you. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Senate Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee, will meet tomorrow morning, Tuesday, February 20th at 7:30 a.m. to become your gun committee. So Senate File 73, Concealed Firearms Permit Eligibility, Senate File 105, Wyoming Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act, Senate File 109, Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act, is what we will be hearing in room 6 and online in the Capitol Extension. We will also reserve a meeting time upon adjournment in room 2 and online in case those bills have a lot of attention and carry over, or if there's a need for anyone else that needs to get bills through to refer to us. So that will be your Senate Ag Committee schedule. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairwoman, the new chair of the ANF Committee. That's
I
Agriculture
guess
and
so.
Firearms.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'm going to rescind my previous motion. Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 2:15 to allow these committees to get some bills processed.
That was pretty well the way I heard it. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Senate will stand.
Sherry.
The Senate will stand recessed until 2:15. Thank you.
You know, the Oil and Gas Commission, CAPCON, that we